Good morning. Just want to welcome everyone, viewers that are watching online, as well as those that are here at the Center at University Park as we open our City of Little Rock sales tax working session. This isn't a formal board meeting, so no official business will be conducted. However, we want to take this opportunity to discuss a potential sales tax subject to the City of Little Rock Board of Director approval to go before the people for approval and have an open discussion as we consider this opportunity. That being said, I just want to level set and just share with the board this is just a really open discussion. We want to get as much feedback, counsel, as we go throughout this process to hopefully formulate a sales tax proposal referendum to go before the city, Little Rock residents. That being said, the goal is just kind of set a few conceptual frameworks for today. We've allotted 2 strong hours to discuss. We definitely can go over if needed. But I also want to stress this is one of a few more meetings that we'll have in an open forum, also in the hopes to transition to some public meetings in the month of August. I do want to share from a framework standpoint, if and when we pursue a sales tax, one, it would have to go before the city board. We want to have some community sessions, maybe 2 to 3 within the month of August to continue to get community feedback. Then hopefully by that time, the deadline from the Pulaski County Circuit Clerk standpoint is that we have until September the 5th if we are interested in pursuing a November election. I would say nothing's off the table, but I do think pursuing a sales tax election in the month of March of 2024 presents a lot of realities that may not be favorable to any sales tax election, no matter what's on the ballot from that standpoint. So just want to kind of set it from that standpoint. That being stated, April, if you'll bring up the PowerPoint. So again, as we discussed, I made an announcement, I guess, March 7th of 2023 at the State of the City with the thought and idea to pursue a sales tax initiatives really focused on 4 pillars, or what we call 4 Ps. And with that standpoint, I think we know that those 4 pillars, those 4 Ps begin with parks and recreation, as well as public infrastructure, public safety, and important economic development. Before we go to that, I want to make certain that we know from a standpoint of what our sales tax is at this point in time. We know the 3/8 cent sales tax fell off at the end of 2021. And so now our combined sales tax rate for the city of Little Rock is 8.75. April, if you'll go to the sales tax slide, just make sure board members are reminded about where we are right now. Again, when you look at these total numbers from a sales tax perspective, that includes all of the county taxes and things of that nature. When you go to purchase something, this is the total amount of the 8.75% that we have in the city of Little Rock. 1.125% of that is our sales tax. As you look at the combined rate of many of the cities in the state of Arkansas, you see that from that standpoint where we are far behind. Clearly, we are the state's largest city, and so our sales tax rate garners more dollars, being the metro and healthcare mecca and a lot of economic development that's here in Central Arkansas. We know that, we understand that. However, our population is about 205,000, but from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., we're probably about 300,000. And so that brings a lot of strain on our infrastructure and quality of life and place amenities. So just wanted to share that. Later this week, we'll also share kind of other like size, similar size, and similar makeup cities and where their sales tax ranges are in comparison to ours and their quality of life amenities. Next slide. We'll pass. Yeah, so from that standpoint, I'm going to start passing out. Director Phillips, if you'll pass out on this side. Board members, what you have coming before you is what we would call is a working draft proposal. Brooke and Mary and Joe, if you guys will walk up, I'll come give you these.
One's for Joan. He's going to take for Joan.
Mayor, one quick question.
And we'll get this, we'll get something emailed to you. April, if you'll make a PDF and get this to me, and I'll get this to Director, or get someone to get a PDF to me, and I'll get this to Director Richardson. That being said, as we go through the 4 pillars, again, I'm not going to talk very long today at all. We want to talk through the first pillar of Parks and Recreation. I think many of us know we pride ourselves, as City Director Peck often says, that we are a city and a park. Historically, we've gained a number of different parks over the period of time. I believe we have 63 active parks in the city. So we have to take care of what we already have. And so part of this proposal that you'll see, and I'll walk through line by line later, is a significant amount of dollars to ensure the maintenance of the existing 63 parks. In addition to that, it's something that we often know that if you're a person, if you're a young family person or a person with a family, or whether you're a grandparent or a mother or father, many parents with active children, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if they live in the city of Little Rock, more times than none, they are traveling outside of the city of Little Rock for youth sports. And so part of this proposed package is to have an indoor and outdoor multi-use sports complex at War Memorial Park. We can talk in more detail about that later today, but essentially that would have soccer, softball, baseball, basketball, of course, and things of that nature, where you have a youth sports complex and management of that here in the state's capital city, not only for our residents, but also be a regional draw in a competition. Well, a recent stat recently shared that youth sports is an $80 billion industry right now. $80 billion, the amount of money that families are spending day in and day out for their children to be a part of youth sports. And this is something, an amenity that families are choosing where to live based on, and something that we want to continue to have. Secondly, we do know that golf, it continues to be critical here in our city, and we've seen a lot of great things happen both at Rebsamen and First Tee. And so what you'll see in here is significant upgrades to Rebsamen golf as well as First Tee golf. In addition to that, Rebsamen tennis and Rebsamen soccer, and we'll continue to go from there. Second P. April, we'll keep going. As we talked, the second P is public safety. We know this board and myself, we work very hard to give historic raises to the men and women of Little Rock Police Department, 8% across the board. If you've been with the police department at least 15 years, you got an additional 2.5%. And so what we want to do is highlight a lot of great things that are going on right now, particularly with our real-time crime center. And so what you'll see inside this package, again, we'll go line by line and then open the floor for questions. There's significant amounts of dollars for our real-time crime center, as well as community policing and mental health units within the Little Rock Police Department, as well as our public safety fleet, which includes fire apparatus and code enforcement vehicles and overall police vehicles. While the city board and myself, we recently funded a proposal over the next 3 years to, I believe, issue about 115 new vehicles. 17 of those new vehicles are already out on the streets. We got to continue to stay ahead of the game as it relates to fleet management from that standpoint, and we want to continue to demonstrate that within this second pillar, the second P in public safety. Third P, April. Public infrastructure. Director Wyrick, this is the nuts and bolts, as you love to discuss as you go to different meetings, as we all go to different meetings. One of the things we know is we got to continue to stay on top of our streets resurfacing, sidewalks, neighborhood streets, and drainage from a public infrastructure standpoint. So you see funding in here. Again, we'll go through line by line shortly. We want to continue to make certain that pillar, which is infrastructure, is the foundation of economic development. And also within that, when you look at the line, that includes streets resurfacing, neighborhood streets, drainage, and also there's some wiggle room for more equipment based on the need that John sees, as well as relates to knucklebone trucks and things of that nature. So I want to make sure that's clear. If it's not clear in the proposal, make sure you know that that type of capital improvement is included. Fourth P, port and economic development. We know last 4.5 years we've recruited close to 10,000 new jobs. A critical component of those 10,000 new jobs is the Little Rock Port. And we're excited about what's been able to happen there with Amazon, HMS Manufacturing, Trex USA, homegrown companies like Interstate Signways and Lexicon and Schick Steel. We continue to see that impact that it has on our economy, both globally and within the city. And so we're grateful for that. I know many of you, Director Hines is aware, I'm sure many members of the board, we're in the final stages of removing our VOR cone, which is paramount to having a super site for the next Tesla manufacturing facility or Lucid manufacturing facility, or name something, maybe it's a battery organization. That being said, we have to have the land available to do that, to recruit, to bring more jobs. And so we want to have additional dollars for the port. But we also recognize that workforce development is key, and part of workforce development is ensuring that workers have the ability from a child care standpoint. And so part of the capital will allow for the Little Rock Port to, if they can figure out the possibility, possibly build through a public-private partnership a child development center, so the workers can have the opportunity when they're coming to work, their children have a productive place to be at, particularly within certain ages. So that will be included, in addition to incentives for our economic development arm to continue to fuel the growth that we've seen from a site selection process and other incentives working with the state's AEDC. And so again, when you think about this, Little Rock has 3 great R's, and that's rail, road, and runway. That's all centrally located in downtown and East Little Rock, and that's continues to be a key when many companies are looking to come to the distribution and logistic hubs of the state's capital city. Next slide, April. So that being said, we've kind of gone through those 4 Ps. Today is not meant to be a sales pitch, because it's meant to be a working session to get feedback, counsel, nothing. I like to be very productive when we do different things. While I visited with many of the board members as much as possible, whether through conversations informally, formally, you all have shared with me many different things. You've also shared some things with City Manager Moore as well, and we've conferred. And from those conversations is this working/living document. I think it shouldn't be too many conversations. This hasn't been included over this period of time. There's also been, over the last couple of years, a lengthy amount of community discussion about various different things that have been implemented here. Even though we've had those community discussions, we still need to go back and have some more community discussions, and we'll do that in the month of August as well. So what I'll do is kind of go line by line, just to share, and I'll go through this quickly and then we'll respond with any questions and discussions. Before we do that, here's a couple. I want to answer a few questions that I think you may have, and I'll do that out front. This contemplates that we will go after 1 penny. This contemplates that we will go after 1 penny. You'll see in the proposal, it shows an accrued amount of $600 million. Why do we show that aggregate number? Is because this proposal, if subject to City Board of Directors approval, will have a 10-year sunset, meaning that in 10 years the voters will have to reapprove this again. And so that's why it's calculated in the 10-year amounts, but also shows the annual amounts. So something may say 30 million, that's really $3 million over 10 years. So for those who are watching online and those that are covering from the press standpoint. So 1 penny accrued over 10 years, a 10-year sunset. The question is, how do you get the 600 million? For those should know, this is a rolling average of what we've seen over the past few years is the 60 million. Quite frankly, we're probably about, last year, we probably accrued around 65 to 67 million, which would be 670 million over 10 years. We wanted to take a flat growth approach and a rolling average of the last few years, and that's why we're being very conservative and going with the 60 million and not 67 million from that standpoint. So when you look at this, it shows that we're going all in on these 4 Ps, but particularly quality and life and place. As a millennial myself, and those behind me being Generation Z, we tend to pick where we want to live first, and then we'll worry about our career. For those that are wiser, as they have discretionary income, want to decide where they want to retire, they tend to do the exact same thing as millennials and Generation Z is. They want to make that decision based on quality of life and place amenities. And so that's what you're seeing in this concept of these 4 Ps and what that takes into account. So answered some of those questions. So now we'll go into lines 1 through 17, what makes up the first P, parks and quality and life. So the first P, first you have a capital investment for Hyman and War Memorial Park, $30 million. You'll see for line number 2, general park and improvements and parks and trails improvements and maintenance. You see about $20 million in new capital. But I want everyone to pay attention to that second line when you go to, as you see this breakdown between capital investments and estimated operating expense. You see that 16.5 right there for the expense. That's for a lot of different things that go. This line is really for the existing 63 parks. This is on top of what we already spend with our general revenue, and Leland will attest that we have not been able to increase our general revenue maintenance account for parks for quite some time. And so this helps us to take care of what we already have as it relates from the maintenance standpoint there for the existing 63 parks and make some capital improvements to existing facilities. 3, want to shout out to the Little Rock Convention Visitors Bureau. We get these numbers from a sports feasibility study that was done 2 years ago and has been recently revised, which takes into account the concept and the aspect of War Memorial Park. And so that's where we got these numbers for the $128 million capital infusion for the indoor sports complex and outdoor sports complex at War Memorial Park, alongside the operating expenses of $8 million. Number 4, you see the West Central Complex for outdoor pool, $5 million capital investments. And again, that's an outdoor pool, not an indoor pool, that'll fit the existing facility near the West Central Sports Complex. Number 5, as we all know, the American Rescue Plan Act dollars that we recently allocated to the center at University Park is going to revamp, renovate this existing building that we're in right now. But we wanted, we know based on some things that the architects wants to do and visiting with Leland Couch, we've added another $3 million in capital for the senior center and pickleball, and adding a pickleball here. If you've been to Ward 6 and you've seen while we're doing a lot of great things with the historic Canis Park and the historic basketball courts that are coming online here pretty soon, you can go an evening starting about 3:30 and not see how packed Canis Park is with pickleball. And we also know that our Weiser residents want to play pickleball as well, and we'll have that here at this center. Another key point, looking at Repsamen and soccer, part of the strategy with the sports feasibility study is while we're going to have an indoor and outdoor complex with soccer, baseball, basketball, volleyball, softball at War Memorial, there's still a need to have a little bit more soccer. And so think through work, in addition to the complex, we're going to be creating an indoor-outdoor sports complex system. And so we'll be able to give a lot more capacity to soccer at Repsamen Park. You might ask, where's soccer going to go at Repsamen Park? So you know where the golf course is, the back 9. We have the ability to put some soccer fields there, multi-use. Again, I want to thank Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau for their sports and feasibility study to help us come to this conclusion. So you see that $10 million there. Number 7 is a Jim Daly indoor Olympic-style pool. That's another aspect that goes into this youth sports system. That's another big draw that the state's capital city is missing, and other cities our size and larger have. Clearly, 8 goes into account more maintenance dollars for expanding new construction. Number 9 is the 15-acre park. We know that in 2025, the 30 crossing projects will be complete. And so we have a standing agreement right now that we would take over the 15-acre green space. And here are the dollars allotted for us to focus on a living park there. And there are a lot of folks with the Downtown Little Rock Partnership, Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau, and our offices that are working towards that concept there. And so you see the money allocated there. 10, as we shared earlier, First Tee and golf expansion and rebranding, $2 million there. Repsamen Golf, you see the $6 million new pro shop facility there. 12 wants to pay special attention, the need for more maintenance dollars at our golf locations right now, which are Repsamen and First Tee. This will be a new infusion of dollars that is sorely needed. We know it is definitely being used right now since the closure of both War Memorial and Hyman Parks, and we're grateful that we are in the black now as it relates to golf here in the city. But since we are in the black, we also know that many of those golf courses are getting more attention than they were before, and so we have to keep up with that pace and improve in the maintenance there. 13, community center investment. All of the community centers that we have, we know what they are, is to add more, a refresh for our youth at the community centers. And one of the things, I give a shout out to directors, Compuris and Richardson. With this, we do believe we want to really work towards extending the hours of our community centers, particularly on the weekends. Clearly, once we have this refresh, we want to make certain that we're using our community centers at full capacity. 14, Repsamen Tennis. I think many people may not know we're one of 50 cities in the United States that have a USTAA, I believe is the acronym, golf tournament, and it's a big honor. We've had it for 43 years, but it's time to really step our game up as it relates to the Repsamen Tennis, which is situated right behind us. Number 15, I think we all, if you haven't figured out right now, the most expensive cheap date in the city of Little Rock is going to the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts, that $200 million facility, which the city board allotted close to $30 to $35 million to that, which is a great public-private partnership that's come online. Clearly, we continue to spend dollars there. We're spending close to about $2 million in helping with the maintenance over the years. It's increased to about $2 million. And I can tell you that the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts, with the new capacity, they are projecting that the maintenance is going to increase well over the $2 million, but we still have to have our fiduciary responsibilities. And so the proposed amount is to do $3 million. I do want to share, and as we all know, Mr. Moore and I co-prepared the city budget. We do feel that this is prudent for us to put the dollars here because what it'll do is free up $2.2 million in general revenues be used elsewhere. So we'll shift from one purse to another purse to fund the Arkansas Museum of Fine Art to allow for other dollars to be expended for other needs within the city of Little Rock. Number 16, you see, is the capital and the operating expenses for the zoo master plan. This city board approved the zoo master plan. It's taken years to do and a lot of money. And so it's now to start implementing those capital and expenditures improvements. And if you can't understand how important the zoo is, just to see how many people, how 6:30 was packed the other day in standstill due to the dollar days. Moving from there, what you see is basically $332 million and $332,250,000 over the next 10 years solely for parks and quality of life. Moving to public safety, really don't have to spend a lot of time there. We know we recently approved a new West Little Rock Fire Station. We have the capital associated with that, but we have to account for the operations. And so you see the operations there accounted in line 19. We've already discussed public safety. We can go in more detail there, but that's pretty self-explanatory from lines 20 to 2022 from that standpoint. Thirdly, public infrastructure. We see this is in addition to what we already spend in our general revenue, be additional, and as well as in addition to the recently passed renewed Little Rock proposal, the $70 million for strategic infrastructure improvements, $5 million for targeted community development infrastructure, and then $40 million for our operations side for street resurfacing, sidewalks, and infrastructure. Already talked about important economic development. Those are pretty self-explanatory from that standpoint. And then this is just kind of more inner workings of nuts and bolts, just from an operational standpoint from a city. You see the information technology amount of $12,250,000. I think we got to continue to focus on our infrastructure for our information technology to continue to protect our city as we move forward. We just recently utilized American Rescue Plan Act dollars to fund the micro home village. And we also know the endless amounts of time and attention that we spend with homeless, whether it's with our day treatment center, with Jericho Way, as well as our emergency shelter that we have in the midst of weather issues. And so that's where you see this $20 million, which is $2 million to clearly define a homelessness budget to help with our homeless advocacy, homeless engagement, as well as our new facility from that standpoint. And then you see downtown Little Rock development, $7 million to go towards infrastructure and other development needs in downtown. We received have been in discussions with the Downtown Little Rock Partnership, Little Rock Convention Visitors Bureau, and others to come up with that number. Museum Discovery again. This $3,300,000. This is on top of what we already spend with the Museum of Discovery. So this is added money from that standpoint. And you see the other kind of nuts and bolts from the Public Facilities Fund, Enterprise Resource Planning. This is crucial. Enterprise resource planning, this has probably happened over the last few decades 2 or 3 times where we have to do a major shift in our operating systems from a financial planning and resource planning standpoint. And then finally, another quality of life. Many of you all are aware of the Illuminate the Rock initiatives that have been going on with the Little Rock Rotary, and we know what we are. We recently received, I guess, now almost a decade ago, Energy Arkansas was able to help the city of Little Rock and others with our current bridges that are lit. But we all know when the new Broadway Bridge was rebuilt, it does have lights, has the capacity for lights, but that comes at a cost. The overall cost, we believe, is somewhere around $5 to $6 million. The city of Little Rock would put up this 2.5, and it's another grand quality of place initiative. And then a private sector group would raise the other amount. So all that being said, that's one penny over 10 years, $600 million with a sunset. And focus on these 4 Ps. I see Director Richardson and Director Hines.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for all the information, just the line item information that you sent or you went over wasn't shown on screen, so hopefully that'll be a part of what it'll be sent to us in the PDF form. We'll be able to see those numbers as part of that presentation. Secondly, at the risk of offending or insulting someone extending like I did a colleague last week, my internet was off last Friday after last Friday's storm, so that's why I wasn't at the meeting Tuesday, because I didn't have access to the internet. So I had every intention of participating in Tuesday's meeting, and I think your presentation was well thought out. I think it was it's comprehensive, and it is comprehensive. The only question I have, and colleagues have been there with me for a while, will know this, it won't be a surprise. I still find it very, very problematic that we couch public safety within the narrow confines of more police, within the narrow confines of police and fire, when in fact, I think the infrastructure part that you talked about should be used as a community building strategy along with the targeted development we're talking about to improve public safety. And all of us know, we all know, we lived there long enough to know that the places where we have the most social ills are the places where we have the weakest communities. There are places where we have food deserts, financial deserts. There's places where we have a disproportionate number of convenience stores and or liquor stores, places where we have the highest number of UV structures, unsafe and vacant structures, places where we have the highest number of vacant lots, places where we have deteriorated communities, which produce some of the social ills that we're seeing and witnessing when we start talking about or selectively talk about crime and increasing crime and community building. And I say that not from a study, man. I say it from having worked those streets, doing gang intervention work some 30 plus years ago. That's one of the first things I noticed, that crime was strongest where community was weakest. We treat the treatment of public safety or crime as if it's a silo when it should be a part of some of those other things that you talked about. A port expansion. We know that most of the people that are involved in criminal activities, suspects and or victims, are either unemployed or underemployed. We know there are places in Little Rock. We know, we can look at the information. There are places in Little Rock where we have an unemployment rate that's higher than the unemployment rate during the Great Depression. So I think that what we got to figure out a way to do, in my opinion, is make public safety bigger and tied into some of these other things. I mean, I don't dance as much as some of you guys do when we announce all these new job announcements at the port, because I don't have the great certainty or high degree of certainty that these jobs are going to be filled by City of Little Rock residents. These jobs are going to be filled by people who drive in and out of our city, take our money in and out of our city, and then help us build our city. And there are some common denominators that we can look at with respect to places that are suffering, places where people are suffering, places where we have all these social ills, and there are some real common denominators, man. You touched on a couple of them: infrastructure, the target development, and I think we need to tie these things together in a way that we're going to address public safety beyond saying more police and more fire. I think those are laudable. I'm not being dismissive of those. Any of my colleagues who want to couch it that way and hear it that way or see it that way, I'm saying that it's bigger than that. It's much bigger than that. We've been doing that since Dean, you guys did Future Little Rock. I was doing gang intervention work. That was 30 years ago, believe it or not. And we've added more and more police, and we haven't seen the level of reduction in crime that a lot of us wish. And there's an old definition of necessity, and it's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We got to expand our thinking. We got to look bigger than police and fire, and bigger than the judicial aspect of community of public safety, and look at building up communities, building up people. I've said this 1,000,001 times, and I'll still say it to the tune of a broken record. We think we're doing it when we're funding programs through PIT, while funding programs that work with young people. But listen, guys, we got a much bigger task than that. Not only do we have to heal the young person, we got to heal the family that produced the young person. And ultimately, and more importantly, heal the community that produced the families. A lot of times these young people are just reflections of traumatic communities that they come from. It can't be denied. Drive through, look through, whatever ward cap we want to call it, drive through and look at the places where we're suffering from the most criminal activity. Look at them. They all have denominators. Let's address those from a proactive standpoint rather than a reactive standpoint, Mayor. And I thank you and your team and Bruce, you guys for putting this together. I think it was comprehensive, it was well thought out, but I think we got to figure out a way to dot some more I's and cross some more T's, in my opinion.
No, thank you so much, Director Richardson, for that feedback. We'll definitely take that into account as we continue to move forward. So thank you for that, Council. Director Hines, then Director Wyatt.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to give you my thoughts. One on kind of run down the gambit of what we've been talking about. I do not think we've got enough time to ramp up campaign, go have the community meetings to do a November election. My feeling is that we should put it in, and I've got a section of my constituency that if we try a special election in November, they're going to come out and vote against it regardless of what the program is, just because we're having a special election. It's become clear at the legislature, and I think if we do a good job, we have a roadmap from 11 years ago when I first got on the board of how we do it. I think we've gotten the cart a little bit in front of the horse, because we've come up with a plan without going and talking to our constituents and our voters. And here's, in short, my proposal. We should go out over the next several months, have listening meetings in every ward in the city. Come up with a plan from that, and I think you've got good bones on what we want to do. Take that input from those meetings, look at this plan that we've already come up with, and then tweak it, go back out and have meetings in every ward and show people that we've listened to them and we can do it. Take that input, tweak the plan, and then put it on the ballot for election next year. And I think the primary next year is actually in May, not in March. I may be wrong on that. As to the amount, I think there's some structural issues with this 1 cent proposal being all sunsetted. We've got 38% of it for operating expenses. I think it's bad policy. I think it puts the city in a bad position to have operating expenses included in a sunsetted tax. My feeling on the tax is a 3/8 cent sunset, much like we did for 10 years, and then 1/4 to 1/8 cent permanent for road resurfacing, a 1/8 to 1/4 cent permanent tax for police car and fire apparatus replacement. Basically a 3/4 cent maximum raise. That brings us up to the same level as our peers in North Little Rock, based on the stuff I saw in municipal league literature. I agree with the investment in our golf courses and our sports complex, but if we fully expect the city to run these operations, we will end up subsidizing them and they won't be maintained correctly. My other proposal would be that we privatize our golf, make the investment in our golf courses, privatize them. I've got the research and the data that shows many municipalities have, when they have privatized their golf course operations, have gone from subsidy to at least break even. In a lot of instances, those privatizations return money to the city for their golf course operations. And I think it would apply to our indoor sports complex and outdoor sports complex arenas. There's organizations like Field of Dreams out of California that's done them for many. Mansfield, Texas is a good example. That they actually take a public investment and return several $1 million a year to the municipalities who have funded those deals, but they have gotten out of the business of running them because I don't think that is in our bailiwick of what we can do. You know, the other question we've got to answer for our voters is, if I'm reading our documents that Sarah's given us, we're running a $6.5 million surplus. So all this talk about we don't have enough money for our parks, we've got budget surplus we're running right now. The question is, how are we going to spend it? And we need to be able to answer to our voters why we're asking for a tax increase at the same time we're running budget surplus, we're running surpluses over what our budgeted tax collection is. Those are just kind of my thoughts. I apologize to my fellow board members. I had a meeting that was supposed to happen last week that got pushed to 9 o'clock this morning, and I'm going to have to break to go to that. It's something very important to my career and how I make my real living. You know, I play politics for fun. So those are just my thoughts in short. I think that we've got some work to do, and I think we need a runway and time to do it. I am not scared of going to the voters. If we tell our story, we have a good track record of doing it. But if we rush something of this magnitude, it is doomed to fail, in my opinion. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Director Hines. Just quickly, if you have to leave, you'll be able to see the tape, but I just want to go through a few of the comments that you did make. One, thank you for all of your comments. Number one, I totally understand where you're coming from on the sunset, but I heard from many of the board members they wanted a sunset with the understanding that they would work hard and in 10 years try to re-up it again. But board members told Mr. Moore they wanted a sunset. I will share with members of the board through polling, consistent polling, voters who are going to vote for this tax, they could care less if it's sunset or not. And so I do think we could just go for a straight 10-year permanent and be solely focused on how we focus on quality of life and place. Oklahoma City has done that from that standpoint, and I don't think they do every 10 years is change the priorities. They don't go back before the voters for the funding. So we don't have to do a sunset. This is in response to what voters said. And then Director Hines, also when it comes to the timing, I think we all know this is something we've been working on since March. We just recently went through a slew of community meetings this past fall, and every community meeting, because I went to every one of them, residents said we want more. And so again, we will have community meetings in the month of August. I don't think it's rushing it. We did have 3 months of a tornado, and so we had to focus on that. But since we did just recently have a slew of community meetings and they all said what they wanted more of, we'll do that again in August. Again, it's up to the city board. Thirdly, the election is in March because next year is a presidential election. And technically, if we go for it in November, it's not a special election because the legislature changed, said you only have 4 times you can go for election, and that's November of any year, irrespective of a presidential year, or the primary year during the presidential election is during March. So from that standpoint. And then finally, as it relates to budgeting from a surplus standpoint, yes, we do have a $6 million surplus, but surpluses only can really take into account capital improvements, not operating expenses from that standpoint. And what we're talking about is not $6 million, but basically even from an annual standpoint, $31 million. But definitely take into account what you said. If we pursue this, we will have meetings in August, but ultimately we can't move forward without the city board approval. I know you have another meeting. Thank you, too, for your comments. And I do like the idea about permanent for public safety. So, all right. Director Wired and Director Webb.
Thank you, Mayor. This proposal looks a lot like the last time we tried to do a sales tax. There is more money into some areas that I've always had concerns for, so I appreciate you beefing up that. I had an opportunity to visit an ill friend in Northwest Arkansas a couple of weekends ago. And he lives on the boundary of Fayetteville, Springdale. Across the street from him is Fayetteville, and he lives in Springdale. If you drive through that community, it's awesome. They have new construction, they have new housing, they have good streets, they have no litter. Everything about that area is really, really nice. Now, you talked about Bentonville, which was a 9.75 tax, Fayetteville, 9.5. I didn't see Springdale in the mix. I don't know what their tax rate is, but they obviously are pumping more money into the area than what we are. So maybe that's what the answer is. I agree with Director Hines in that in 2011, when we passed a sales tax, we went to the community, we said, okay, we're thinking about this. This is the categories for it. What do you want to see? And we took feedback from the community, went back and said, okay, this is what we're going to do, and the community bought it. We passed it successfully. They knew what was in the plan. There was no question as to what we were going to do. And we did a lot of good work with that sales tax that we put into place in 2011. So I think that's important. The last sales tax that we did, I do not believe that we socialize it in the community enough. I'm very interested in quality of life issues, as Director Richardson talked about. When I look at the proposal here, and this is roughly, and it's just looking at the numbers that I consider new growth versus maintenance, and it looks like we've got somewhere around 361 million. That's for new items, and then another 237 million for what I would call existing things that we need to take care of in the city. We got a lot of ticket takers in the city where we're taking requests for various things that need to happen, but when it gets to the field for the work to be done, it seems like we're lacking in either personnel, equipment, training, those types of issues. And I'm not sure, like for instance, garbage pickup. I've heard that we have a number of trucks that are missing in regards to going and picking up trash. I've heard that they're located in fleet trying to be repaired. Do we have additional dollars for garbage pickup, trucks, personnel, those kinds of things in this budget? Because that's very important. I got an email this morning about somebody that's been sitting there in my area for 2 weeks and hasn't been picked up, and I've had to refer a number of them lately. Maybe it's because the trucks need to be repaired. Maybe we don't have enough. Maybe we don't have enough people. But that's a key thing. Ditch clean out, and I know that's seasonal. With the growth that we experience from spring to fall, I know this is a heavy time of the year for that kind of work to be done, but they're pushed off for a long time. And how do we resolve that? A couple of months ago, I talked to the board about a 311 dump that came from District 5, which was presented to code enforcement, came from code enforcement to our Southwest UPS meeting. And there's roughly 958 items on this list that have been reported to 311. And I asked at that meeting, I brought it up, and I asked at that meeting for someone to put that into a spreadsheet form, and let's see what are the issues, what's the demand, what do we need to improve the 311 response time. And I didn't get it. I asked again yesterday for a spreadsheet so I could go in and sort and look at that. But these things are concerning to me, and they're part of what I call quality of life in our communities. The sunset situation that Director Huns brought up, I kind of agree on the operations side, that if you sunset that, then once the 10 years is up, then how do you keep up what you built from the construction side? I think that's a problem. I think we need to look at that. Talked about code enforcement. Pretty strong that we need to make some improvements there. Under neighborhood programs, I'm not sure about that category. In that category, we've got Downtown Little Rock Development and Museum of Discovery. I don't know about that category, how we came up with that being neighborhood programs. That doesn't seem to be, doesn't fit for me. Maybe somebody can explain it to me. Infrastructure, I've been a proponent of improving our infrastructure because, as you know, Southwest Little Rock was annexed into the city in the late 80s with a lot of the infrastructure is still in place. We have open ditches, we have no sidewalks, we have very, very little curb and gutter. But I don't know that we have a good list of the needs because we went through and we looked at the millage and we allocated some projects from the millage. And then after we allocated the projects, we have people that come forward and say, well, you know, I requested something to be done a long time ago and nothing's ever been done and it's not in the infrastructure list. So I'm concerned that I know that looks like a lot of money and it is more than what we had in the last sales tax question, but I don't know if that's good or not. It may need to be more. I don't know. So those are just some initial facts that are initial thoughts that I have about the proposal. And, you know, I look forward to some more conversations with it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. And you're right. In my conversations with you, a lot of things increased because of your advocacy on public infrastructure. So thank you for that.
And I appreciate that because it is, I think it is important. We get calls every day.
Yes, ma'am.
In regards to potholes and ditches and roadways and those kinds of things. But we need to look at what I call quality of life issues, and that is the cleanups of our neighborhoods and make them, I want us to look like Northwest Arkansas in a lot of our neighborhoods, which today we don't.
So, yes, we'll get to that.
If you look at the population, and I did this while I was up there, I looked at Bentonville, Fayetteville, and Springdale because they've all grown together. They're like a community together. And they're a little bit higher than what Little Rock proper is in regards to population from the last census. So if we,
Yeah, but they're all three separate cities.
I get that, but they're all growing together. They all have about the same sales tax increases or same sales tax. I don't know about Springdale. If somebody could tell me what
Springdale's, I believe, it's a little bit under them, but they're higher than us as well. But let me get to some of your questions. First and foremost, again, I want to continue to reiterate to the city board members, I've always been in favor of a new tax that's not sunsetted because we're going to always have needs as it relates to public infrastructure, parks, and public safety. Cities our size and larger have dedicated taxes for those three things. Again, I continue to tout Oklahoma City and their MAPS program, where they have a dedicated sales tax for quality of life in place. The only thing that they redo every 10 years are the priorities of the existing funding. They're not going back out to the people for a new set amount of funding. They're just reorganizing those dollars because as needs come to a place. I think that's a serious question. I know board members like the idea, we need to sunset it. That's good accountability. But what I'm sharing with you is what we've seen in polling, what we continue to hear out. Our residents want to make certain that we are staying on top of the existing needs and keep doing the work. And so I don't think we need to sunset. I listened to you all. You all said you want a sunset. However, there's no guarantee that any of us will be here 10 years from now. And so we have to make the best decisions with our responsibility that we do for the entire city for its future. I don't think we need a sunset. And I think it better positions us from a quality of life in place that we pass this tax. And again, the polling said that if you're going to vote for the tax, you don't care if it's sunset or not because you voted for the tax. So that's on that standpoint. So I think what I'm hearing now is we need to change the sunset and just do a 10 years straight, what I continue to hear. So that's number one. Secondly, as it relates to the trucks, and again, that's a notation issue on my end. Director Wire, I did say earlier that the line for the public infrastructure lines 26 and 24, particularly 24 and 26.
Yes, sir.
There is a lot in their equipment, so that's already accounted for in those dollars. And I also want to remind the board members again, just literally a few months ago, we just passed Renew Little Rock bonds, and that goes towards infrastructure. So that pot of money, plus this pot of money, plus our general revenue funds, which now brings hundreds, more than 100, close to probably more than $200 million funding for public infrastructure. And so that's all combined together. That's all going to be constructed together over the next 10 years with this. And so that could be a game changer when you add a potential sales tax, the recently passed millage, and general revenue. Those are three pots of money all going towards public infrastructure in the same period of time. Thirdly, as it relates to code enforcement is included in this from a fleet perspective on line 22. Mr. Moore and I, first and foremost, I want to make certain that everyone knows that this city board approved our proposal. We've increased the salaries of our code enforcement from 29 to 35,000. I think that took in place in late 2019, 2020. Just like our officers are having an arms race, our code enforcement officers, we're starting to see a lot of our code enforcement officers, they're being hired by us, trained by us, and then they're being swifted away by some other cities. And so there's going to be a proposal in the budget to go from 35,000 to 41,000. I think that, from a general revenue standpoint, addresses a lot of your concerns, because I think once we go to 41, which we already are almost up to full capacity on our code enforcement officers, we just probably need more, and we can build that into the budget from a general revenue standpoint. So I think in the budgeting process this December, we can address that concern. Again, two takeaways for the city board: increasing the salaries from the code enforcement from 35,000 to 41 on the general revenue, not this, totally separate aside. And with that, look at adding some more positions in the budget for code enforcement. Again, separate and aside from sales tax. Thirdly, on the neighborhood programs, to get your vote, Director Wyrick, whatever you want us to change that title to, we'll change it to. We just, they always say that downtown Little Rock is everyone's neighborhood, and both of those line items just happen to be in neighborhood Little Rock. There's no stylistic proprietary towards this, so if you wanted to be called Nuts and Bolts in Downtown, we'll call it Nuts and Bolts in Downtown.
It would just look kind of different to me. So.
We'll change it. All right.
Can
And
I ask you a
then,
question? Under the two, actually, you said that the equipment was included in the public infrastructure for public works. And, they got big Tonka toys there. They have a lot of expensive equipment. So I know they had a chipper they bought. It was, $2 million? Almost $2 million. So they have big Tonka toys. So when you start looking at the equipment out of this, then, you need to be careful that we don't diminish the amount that we put in our infrastructure. The other thing is, this is a question under item 22, and I apologize for interrupting you. What is this apparatus replacement, including EVs? What is EV?
EV stands for electric vehicles.
Oh, okay. So when you look at code enforcement, I get back to the deal where you have a lot of ticket takers. And in some regard, part of the code enforcement folks are ticket takers. We need to make sure that we have the equipment and the manpower once we get those tickets, once we make those citations, that we can go back and follow through on what it is that needs to be repaired. I think that's where we're falling short, honestly. So,
And I agree with you. And again, I want to make just, again, level setting. This is a sales tax proposal. We still have the general revenue with this increasing on the salary increases for our code enforcement officers. We can address the ticket taker issue. In the sales tax proposal, this is more equipment for the ticket takers. From that standpoint, again, we have to get ahead of where we already are and stay on top of it. Same thing with fire apparatus. Again, I think the city board just approved through the Renew Little Rock bonds. We just spent, Mr. Moore, about $8 million on some fire apparatus recently, and that's great. But we all know one of our firefighters, for whatever reason, right, wrong, or indifferent, or just freak of havoc, right now while we're in here, can have a wreck on a $2 or $3 million vehicle, and now we got to wait to get it fixed. Now we got to deal with, logistics. We got to just keep moving. All of this, and again, we have to get out of the mentality of, again, I'm going back to the sunset. If we have a steady stream of income, we can always prepare for the issues that we know are going to happen, no matter what. But all your issues from a capital standpoint will be included, Director Wyrick. And again, I want to make certain, right now we got 3 purses, or 2, we got 2 purses for sure. We're trying to get a 3rd purse. First purse is general revenue. Second purse is Renew Little Rock. That's just now getting started. And then simultaneously, if we can get this done this year, a 3rd purse. And that'll keep us moving forward. We just got to be on that consistency. And then I think I've addressed most of your questions. What I'm hearing is we need to not have a sunset. Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Then Director Peck, then Director Lewis, just so everyone knows their order.
I wasn't here when we passed the last sales tax, but to hear Director Hines and Director Wyrick talk about the process, I was here as a resident, not as a member of the board, and I remember a little bit of the process and the outreach that was done. And just from going through the bond process last year, the community meetings that we had, the input that the residents felt like that they gave, it felt like we took our time and we did it properly, and I do feel very rushed on this. To your point, Mayor, about people saying they wanted more, I do agree with that. During the bond meetings, I know you heard that from Ward 3 in terms of infrastructure and dollars for parks. We had $100 million in infrastructure requests from Ward 3, that only from Ward 3. But at the same time, I've been going to the neighborhood meetings the last couple of months and asking people about a sales tax, asking for feedback, and the overwhelming response I'm getting is not right now. We want to have time to really delve into it, kind of like the way they did on the bond meetings. There's some big ticket items in here that I would have a lot of questions about. To Director Wyrick's point about, do we have people to operate these things? To Director Hines' point, we can't operate. I question whether we need to be in the golf business or the sports complex business. I want to see Director Hines' research about the golf. I don't disagree with Director Hines about if we have the right plan, the voters would support it whenever it is. And I hear that they want something that's very narrow, and you and I have talked about this, and this is not as narrow as I would like to see. and those are just initial comments. I'm not even ready to talk about Sunset because there's a lot to absorb here before I even get to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Webb. Again, I want to appreciate your comments. Just that was the last I didn't get a chance to share with Director Hines on as it relates to private management of facilities. The indoor-outdoor sports complex would not be managed by Little Rock Parks Department. That would be a private contract working with our Parks Director and the leadership team. So the indoor-outdoor sports complex would be a privately managed. What you see in many cities who do have indoor-outdoor sports complexes, that's a contract-driven management between the leadership of the Parks Department and a private sector organization for the indoor-outdoor sports complex. As it relates to golf, I don't think it's wise to do a privately managed golf deal because our issue with golf is, one, we're now profitable. We were not profitable in 2019. We're now profitable. The issue now is maintenance. It's not the management of the golf facilities. It's just having the dollars to do the maintenance. And we only have 2 facilities. If we had 4 facilities, 5, we probably would need to have a contract for golf operations. But we don't have that. We only have 2. And so as long as we have the maintenance from that standpoint, and again, as I continue to share with members of the board and Director Webb, I know you may have heard some folks in your ward say one thing. We all hear different things, but what every meeting I go to in any ward is they want more and they don't want to wait, and they're tired of seeing the state's capital city not having something that other folks have, and they don't want to wait for it. So, but again, that's to the city board. I just don't think we can afford to wait, because what's going to happen is we're going to continue to go to meetings, and people are going to continue to ask, what are we doing? And so I'm asking our board to consider that in that process. And again, we just had community meetings less than 3 to 5 months ago, and they're not saying anything new. And what they're saying is they want more investment in these areas of quality of life and place. And again, we won't pursue anything to go before the people without going back to the people. And we'll have the month of August. Clearly, I would love to have 6 months to do this. We would have done that. But there was an act of God, EF3 tornado, that took our attention away, rightfully so, for the last 3 months. I don't think it's wise to go in March. I think it's very unwise to do it in March. There's a presidential election. There's a lot of folks on the ballot, and it gives people a reason to say no. But that's from that standpoint. But definitely want to take all that feedback you shared. Particularly, I think you're right, Director Webb, on the Sunset. And this, again, Director Webb and members of the board, this is not our first meeting. We'll try to have some more.
Can we have an update on the bond, where we stand on bonds at an upcoming board meeting very soon?
Yes, at the next meeting we'll have regarding this, we can.
Thank you.
Director Peck, sorry, then Director Lewis.
Thank you, and I'll be brief because most of my colleagues have already expressed some of my opinions. And, Mayor, when we met with you and Bruce and I for, about an hour and a half, I supported Rebuild the Rock, support this. For the most part, I do have some questions. I think that, and you don't want to hear this, but I think barreling down to August to get this done is not enough time. Believe me, I understand how the tornado impacted a lot of things, and we weren't able to go out to the community before then. I know we've been at community meetings recently, but it wasn't to talk about these specific projects. I feel like it's not Rebuild the Rock 2.0. There's some definite changes, and I think these changes will make it more palatable to a lot of people that were not supportive of Rebuild the Rock. I just feel like, 30 days is just not enough time, especially in August when people are getting ready to take last-minute vacations, school starting. I'm just nervous that we cannot get enough buy-in and input from the community to get this on the ballot in November. I do share with you that it'd be better in November than in March, but I just don't want to fail again because I believe in these projects and I know how important it is, and I think all of us too. I want to echo what Director Wyrick said about just the looks of the city and some ways that we just must address the way the medians look, the trash everywhere. I get comments about it all the time. And I know Public Works is doing a phenomenal job. They're overwhelmed, but we have got to do something to clean up our city. I'm tired of not just constituents, but visitors to my restaurant talk about how much they love Little Rock, but why can't we take care of it? Why can't we clean it up? The sunset, I'm okay not having the sunset. I will say that I haven't solicited input from constituents or citizens of Little Rock, but I have been getting feedback because people know we're having this discussion. They know we've been talking about it, and I've been asked over the last several weeks, well, what's it going to look like? And are we going to have concrete information? And, I haven't been able to give them anything yet. I've been getting some pushback like Vice Mayor Webb has, that people are fearful about a recession, about the economy, that now's not the time. I'm a grown woman. It is time. I just am fearful that unless we are 100% committed on this board, like all 10 of us cheerleaders, or at least 9 of us, it's not going to pass. And I really feel very strongly that a 30-day push or a 35-day push is just cutting it short. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for
You're very welcome.
Director Peck, for all of your support. And we totally agree with you. 30, 35 days is a short period in time. But as I continue to reiterate, as we all do, every resident is asking us, how do we improve? How do we get better? It takes money. And, I continue to hear is, why do we got to keep waiting? Why do we got to keep waiting? However, I know there's other folks who may say, well, let's get some more time. Let's get some more time. I just don't know let's just say, one, I agree with you. We need to have majority of the board. I don't think we'll ever get to all 10. Maybe 8 will be supportive, maybe 9, maybe 7. But I do think majority of the city wants to see more improvement, wants us to keep up to our pace, our growth. We're experiencing growing pains, which is a good thing from that standpoint. And again, I definitely don't want this to be, from a board perspective, driven down anyone's throats and we have a vote and people have to take that just doesn't work well. What I do know is, let's say we don't go after it. Each of us are going to have to go to community meetings and there's going to be, well, why don't we have this? And why don't we have that? And we got to continue to have those discussions. I think we all just know that. And once we make a decision, we all are one accord and we'll drive that. But the only way to improve our city with the existing growing pains that we have and the existing dollars that we have is we got to increase revenue. Another way to increase revenue is we continue to do what's been happening is we have a 5 or 6% growth rate, get more people moving here, and hopefully one day that, our 6 million surplus is 20, 25 million, and we can start doing even more from that standpoint. But until we get to that point, we got to find a steady stream of income. But again, nothing's written in stone. If the board, again, I have to make a conscious decision on what to put before the board, but if I continue to get feedback and the board wants to, take a temperature and slow pedal it, or not slow pedal, but just kind of wait a little bit, then, that may be something we have to do. But again, March, I'm just going to, the presidential election is not wise to have a sales tax in March of 24. And so what that looks like is now we're waiting another 1.5 to 2 years of complaints from residents from that standpoint. Director Lewis.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do want to start by just saying, I remember the community meetings back in the fall, and yes, a lot of the issues that I heard specifically with Ward 6, I'm still hearing today, and I've been having to say, well, the bond money has been allocated, yes, that particular project didn't fit, but it's still on the list. We haven't lost sight of it. So hopefully, I know you stated that the feedback from those meetings is kind of what helped shape this proposal. So that is good. That puts me at ease because I can continue to go out there and say, we haven't lost sight of that, but if we get more revenue, then that can help knock those off the list. I do know, just from me personally, I have like a leadership type role to where I feel like it's my duty to kind of steer the citizens, especially the ones that I'm talking to. And I've been saying, if we get more funds, then we can do this. And from what I'm hearing, we will be able to continue to increase salaries, which will fill more jobs, which will give us more manpower to do the issues that I'm hearing about: cleaning ditches, getting drainage projects pushed through, youth activities, wanting this pool. So I'm just trying to understand, if we as leaders don't go out and be an ambassador and say, I hear you, but this is why we need this, they'll follow our lead, or mine will anyway, because we have to be the ones. We were voted in this position, so just have them follow our guidance, because everyone won't be, or is not chosen as leaders, but that's our duty, I feel like. So maybe if we go out and properly tell the story that we are hearing you, we have been hearing you, and we are wanting to set these things in motion, but now we need you. We need you to help us push this through, because it's one thing to complain, but it's another thing to continue to complain and not take action. So I'm just ready to take action, because I don't like having to say, well, not yet, or no, we can't. I don't like the answer no. I just don't. So I want to figure out, what can we do to progress to get some of these changes, so we are looking like Northwest Arkansas, so we are looking like Dallas and Atlanta. It's going to take us to move forward and do some action to get more money in. So if we have to work diligently and start being an ambassador, I think that just may be what we need to do. But I think it's the narrative and how we push it, and letting our people know we have been hearing you, and these are the things that we are trying to tackle with this sales tax. Because again, I don't like being told or telling people, well, we can't do that because of this. Well, then we need to offer a solution. And it sounds like the solution is getting more money with this sales tax.
Thank you so much, Director Lewis. Definitely appreciate those comments. Director Campuris.
I think Director Phillips was up before me, wasn't he?
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Phillips.
Appreciate your deference, Director Campuris. First of all, thanks to Office of Executive Administration for doing the work to get us to this point, to have the discussion. I want to, I guess, take a step back, but maybe not take a step back, and discuss some of the items. And I don't know, Mayor, if this is for you or the city manager or whoever else, but number 37 lists downtown parking decks with an S. What are those decks with an S?
Director Phillips, mainly that is the deck that we've been talking about for our public convention center.
On Louisiana?
Correct.
Okay, so it's one deck?
Correct.
Okay. I have concerns about that, but I know this is not time to get into all those details, but I'll note that for the city manager and the mayor about the funding for the deck with the influx of parking in downtown as it currently stands. Secondly, I think some of my colleagues kind of hinted on this, but I want to drill down a little bit further. Is there anything we can do? Let me back. I wasn't here when we passed the sales tax in 2011 either, but even in the last few agendas items that we had currently in 2023, we're still doing work from the 2011 sales tax. Well, we'll see a few things to say, well, this is from the 3.8 sales tax. That was 12 years ago. So what can we do if this passes? Well, we're not waiting 12 years to implement things that people voted on in 2023. What kind of capacity or infrastructure or private partnerships do we need to create that if this passes, we can hit the ground running and get things done a little bit quicker than 12 years?
Remember, there's a difference between a bond issue that we
Correct.
just passed in September and a sales tax. The bond issue, once you all pass the ordinance, the money comes to the city. So we have that $160 million in the bank, so to speak. Sales tax is pay as you go, basically. I mean, now what the board did, which I think was appropriate, and we recommended it, was we did move some mainly public safety projects up, basically did short-term financing to build the 12th Street station, to build the fire station out on Stagecoach. So we do have that ability, but again, remember that the major difference is that the sales tax is pay as you go, so to speak, it comes in on a monthly basis. The other thing, and John would talk about this, and we've talked about this a lot, is just the capacity of the Little Rock, Central Arkansas market. If you look at our resurfacing contract that we've done over the past 12 years, there's only 2 companies that have gotten the project, and they switch every 3 years, Redstone and Cranford. There's just not, the Little Rock market just doesn't have enough capacity to be able to do more than I think we were doing $3 million a year, John, if I remember correctly. So it's not an issue of delaying projects. It's really, we did move the public safety projects up. We bought brand new radios for communications. I mentioned 12th Street, the fire station on Stagecoach. But then you also had to determine how many dollars were coming in on an annual basis to be able to pay those short-term notes back. So yeah, and I think I was going to ask the vice mayor after the meeting. I think that's what she was asking, maybe for an update on where we were on those projects on the 3/8 cent. But John's staff did have to spread them out over, and we did it in 3 phases. The board agreed to do it in 3 different phases so we could get all the projects done in a timely manner.
And that makes sense, and that's exactly what I was getting at, so I appreciate the context, City Manager. So if this passes, what I'm hearing, because I wasn't here last time, that there could be an opportunity for this board to make a decision as a group to say, hey, this project or this money, I mean, here it's listed $70 million in strategic infrastructure improvements, and from all the public meetings we had about the bonds, we kept saying there's not enough money to do all these projects, right? So if we made a decision that we want to go after short-term financing to increase to increase the quickness of some of those projects, that's an option, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Correctly.
That's fair. And then secondly, what I'm hearing is that there's a capacity issue on the companies in Central Arkansas that can do the work. And I know Director Adcock, I know she's not here today, but she's been pretty adamant about let's make sure we use people locally, and I support that. But if there's not people here to do it and those people are maxed out, is there a reason why we couldn't go get someone a little further away so our residents can see the benefit of the sales tax dollars quicker?
There's not, in all of our projects, and let's take the resurfacing, and John has taught me over the years if that's the best way to save a street. is to make sure it gets resurfaced. So we bid all of those contracts. It's a $3 million bid, and when you think about all the construction that the RDOT is doing across the state. You can't go anywhere on the interstate in Arkansas and you don't see work going on. It really is a capacity issue. And so we don't exclude anybody. We bid it out and, we try to get as many companies to bid because I don't like to bring forward one bid to the board. But that's sort of from a capacity standpoint where we are right now. So it's not anything that we exclude anyone from. It's just people, instead of a $3 million project, they're bidding on a $30 million project.
Okay. And that may be my ignorance on that regard, but I know I see companies out of state doing work on our interstates, and I'm sure that's through RDOT. And I was wondering, was there anything that would preclude us from hiring someone from wherever so Chico Road can get resurfaced in 2024 as opposed to 2034?
Yeah, there's nothing that could preclude that.
Okay, all right. My next question, I have a few, Mayor and City Manager. As it relates to the Museum of Fine Arts, great investment by the city. I was there last night for the Wednesday night spins, Director Miller, and had dinner there last night. Happy about it. But I would like to know how much money I would like an update before I can agree to another $30 million. How much have we given them thus far? What's the current plan on the money we're giving them in addition to what's allocated here? That's a lot of money. And there's a lot of things we can do with $30 million. So I would like a audit of sorts on how much we've already allocated to the Museum of Fine Arts, how much we've, I guess already expended is the right word, how much we have allocated going forward separate from the $30 million, so I can have a full picture of how much money we're spending on the museum. I understand it's a public-private partnership, but we got to be good stewards of these dollars for the entirety of the city. So if we can get that information quickly, I appreciate it. Secondly, and this goes to Director Richardson's point about our investment in the port, we've done a great job there. So I applaud Office of Executive Administration and my colleagues in supporting the port. But I do share Director Richardson's concern about the workforce may not be Little Rock residents, and I know we can't really control that. So I was wondering, could some of this money for the port, is there any way that we can use that money to do some workforce training for our residents so they can become better qualified for these jobs that are at the port? Is that a possibility?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to, we can drill down on that. I just wanted to make sure we can do it. Next thing, as it relates to the Sunset Mayor, I think I've shared this with you. I want to do whatever can get this passed, but if I had my way in this regard, I wouldn't have a sunset either, Mayor. I do like what you mentioned about Oklahoma City and their ability to continue to invest in their city. We're having to go back to the voters every 10 years or so. What's next on my list? We already talked about sales tax. And then I also want to echo what Director Lewis said about, I guess, kind of our role in the timing of this. What I'm hearing too, Mayor, from people who reach out to me is all the things they want in their city that we're not providing, and this is an opportunity for us to do it. But if I can take the audience and the public back to my American politics class at Bowdoin College, my freshman year, was reading the Federalist Papers, and in that study, the founders of the country were discussing politicians' roles as delegates or representatives. And there was a huge debate at the founding of the country about whether when you're elected, are you just doing what the people want you to do, or is your role to also kind of guide people at certain times in helping the people who have elected you to put the country in the right spot. Ultimately, what we ended up was a kind of a hybrid of the delegate representative system in our form of government, where people are elected in America has that dual responsibility as a representative and a delegate. And I agree with Director Lewis. At this point, this is our opportunity for us to be a delegate for our people and help lead us in the right direction. There are things that are beyond our control. Unfortunately, Mayor, I remember when we tried to do the sales tax back, I guess it was going to be 2020, and then the pandemic happened. And then I guess we were going to do this earlier this year, and then a tornado happened. And I think this is our opportunity for us as leaders, as delegates who've been hired by the city to lead the city, opportunity for us to lead in that fashion, to be delegates and say, this is what we need. We hear you. So I support what Director Lewis is saying. This is our opportunity for us to fulfill that role. It was contemplated by the founders of the country back in the 18th century. But with that, Mayor, in light of those things that I mentioned, I would like to drill down on the museum issue and the workforce training issue and make sure that we have some capacity building in place, that if this passed, we can get to work quickly. But again, I appreciate the work, and I'm hopeful that the board and the city will be supportive of this so we can continue to move the city forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Phillips. We'll get you the audit on the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts, and yes to the port workforce availability funding. Director Campiris.
Thank you, Mayor. It's always interesting when you look at something new, how you process it in your mind. And I'm going to go back and take these items and try to separate them into either existing issues that need to be improved or maintained as they should be, or new items that come in. And I would encourage us all to do that as you look at this and separate this out. Because the thing that I've learned is that one of the criticisms, and justly received criticism, is that we don't do as good a job as we should maintaining what we have. And so if you just take the easiest example, I voted for, and when you brought up that we eliminate 2 of our golf courses, and we have 2 golf courses that now are making money for the first time, but we're not doing the job we should take care of them. We have a world-class golf course at Rebsamen, so when you look at this list, that goes under existing that we need to really improve. We have War Memorial, and we need to do something with it, and we promised the people we'd do it. But a sports complex that I think would be beneficial to our community would go under my category of new things. So as I go through that, I can try to honestly assess where we are on each one of them, and I think that's what we need to do. And going back to what Andrea said, I think that we seem to separate a sales tax proposal, if we're going to do one, between November and March. But that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back and look at these things, look at what we've done right, and what we can do to improve the community. And if Bruce and Frank get enough opportunities for us to go to the community, then we can shoot for November. And then we come back as a group and say, we think we've educated people enough or not. And if we have, then we're ready for November. But if we say we're going to go look at November, that doesn't mean that if we get to November, or we get to the time we have to vote for November, we hadn't done it, then we can say, we're not ready to go yet. But to arbitrarily say today, we're either going to do it here or there, means that we're not going to do either one of them well. And so if you shoot for the November and we're honest and we come back and say, these are things we've done well, these are new things we need to do, and we think we've told our constituents, as you said, the reason to do it, then we can vote to do it in September to go ahead then and do it. But to not look at the shorter date, because I think it is going to be real hard in March with the presidential election to have any sales tax election. I mean, I just think that's going to be a lot of other things going on. The other issue that I think we really need to consider is the sunset versus capital versus ongoing expenses, whether you have one vote or two votes. And those are things we really need to discuss as a group over the next month. There is Oklahoma City has done this, and the reason they've gotten away with doing it is they had huge success the first time. So because of the success the first time, there was a built-in quality that people thought, we've done it, and now we're going to reset our priorities and we'll do it the next time. And that's worked, but I'm not sure we're in that situation. I hope we are, but that's something we ought to think. I have a hard time saying that we're going to do all these capital items that we want to talk about doing. So this is the new category or improving category. And then in 10 years, I won't be here. Now, there's some people on this board that may be here, but I'm not going to be here 10 years from now. And I don't want to leave them with the problem with saying we've got all these new things going on and now we don't have money to pay for it. So that's something we need to really think about real hard on how we're going to do. And we really need to also think about what's the best thing we tell our community on how we're going to do this in order to get this passed. And then the last thing that I hope we really look at in this is the thing that Ken has been saying and I've been saying, is that it is a silly proposition to now have put money into our community centers and not to spend lots of money in programming, because that's public safety. That's how you take care of people. And so I think that's one of the things we need to really emphasize, at least on this, and I've got to, again, go through this and dissect it. But I would urge you to look at, and you and Bruce come up with a proposition or a proposal on how we put this out for a November election. We work towards that, and then we make a decision as the board whether we've succeeded or not succeeded in educating the community. And if we have, we're fine. If not, then we just move it on to another date. But if we sit here and say we're going to do this or that, and we leave here today and no one knows what we're going for, we're not going to succeed in what we're trying to do. So look at the short date. Y'all come back with us in the short order on how to do it. I would take this whole list and reorganize it to existing, new, and then kind of ongoing, so people can know what we're really trying to do and why we're trying to do it, and then move ahead on that and how we're going to and why we're doing it this way. So that would be my proposal.
Thank you so much, Director Campiris. Well, we definitely can rearrange the proposal to show what's existing, what's new, what's ongoing. I do like your idea of the potential of 2 votes with capital versus expenditure. And I'm happy to hear your thought process, just thinking into the future, 10 years from now, not putting a future board in a predicament from that standpoint on the sunset clause. We'll get a defined schedule, but what one of the things we can kind of commit to is that each Tuesday until right before September the 5th, we'll continue to discuss this a lot sometime after we get through with business to discuss this as it relates to some community meetings. Mr. Moore and I will get together and figure out how we can get some community meetings. What we may do is combine a couple of concerted wards, connected wards, like wards 2 and 7 may have the same meeting together. Wards 4 and 5 have a meeting together from that standpoint, just from a timing standpoint, but we'll get to that.
Well, I think we'll come, But this requires a planning on your part, the director's part. It's August when people don't want to be here, but that's, if that's what we're going to try to do September. But if we move towards that and then we come back in September and we say we've succeeded, fine. If we haven't, we just declare we tried and we move on from there. But if you don't try to move for that date, then it's not going to work. But we have to also know that if we don't think we're ready then we don't do it. And that's,
No, totally agree. And thank you for that feedback. Director Miller, then Director Richardson, then Director Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. I want again thank you to the city manager, thank you to the staff for putting this together. I know it takes a whole lot of work to do this, and it gives us something to look at. And so kudos for you, city manager and the staff for doing this for us, because again, this is not easy, and then you subject yourself to all the questions and things that you're going to get specifically about this, but it's easier for us to look at something and shoot for something than to try to come up with all this work you've done already. So I want to commend you for that. In my ward, there are at least 16 different groups that I meet with, and it's tough to meet with them. Just like what we're having this meeting here, all this conversation with just 10 people, 11 people, it's 2 hours. I have this conversation a lot with community groups that I have to meet with, and they want to have input on this. There's a group like ACO that I've been trying to meet with for 3 weeks. Hadn't been able to meet with them. Hopefully I'll meet with them this Friday to talk about these type of things. So it's extremely important that we have these kind of discussions and want to have the feedback. Quite frankly, I have not talked to any group who is not supportive of a sales tax. Let's just get that out there. They want to have more revenue to do the things that they want. But what I run into is this, certainly from a public works standpoint, and we heard this during the millage. I had this request before Public Works 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but it keeps getting pushed back because, again, it's not one that benefits a larger group. And so those are the type of questions that I get when we deal with more money for Public Works, questions that I get from residents who say, I've had this on the list for 15 years and had nothing been done. So I want to get a big picture look of what we have in Public Works, because I know we've prioritized things, and I appreciate that. We already done that. But also the things that people have been requesting and how long they've been on this list, because that is tough for me to deal with, and it's tough for me to sit up and answer those type questions and deal with those type of things when someone said, look, I want things done, but I've requested this for over a decade or two. And so that's extremely important to get that big picture list, because like you said, we have this millage money. Let's take a look at what's on there and then what is not on there and what people have had on there for years and years and years and what may be addressed here. Specifically, I don't want to get into, nitpicking this at this point because we got a little time to do that. But when I look at item 25, targeted community development infrastructure, I want to have something specific. I don't want to have this pot of money that we said we're going to use for targeted community development, and it's not specific. It needs to be specific for me. If it's going to be some money, let's talk about what it is. Don't put it in a bucket that says that this is for some projects that may come up in the future because we know there's some infrastructure needs in these targeted areas, and we're going to get to that. That, in some cases, it never gets done because it's just this bucket of money and we're arguing about where it should go. I want it to be specific, quite frankly. I don't want a bucket of money that says we're going to do this in these targeted wards, and then we have a debate about where the money is going. Let's talk about where the money is going to go on the front end, so that we don't have, I don't want to have a bucket of money that is for targeted community development. I don't know what targeted community development is specifically. So I think that's important for me. And then, when we have said we're going to do certain things, and I understand the capacity issue that the city manager's brought up and what we have capacity to do. Certainly as it relates, say, to Interstate Park, we said we're going to do this, we're going to fix this, it's on the list, we're going to do this. I hadn't seen any work go out over there anymore. At this point, I hadn't seen anything. Obviously, it's probably a capacity thing, but we've told the people we're going to do this. When is it going to be done? When can we see something being done? Because it always gets back to, we're going to do this, we got money for it. Say even in item 13, community center investment. We're going to fix this at Dunbar. We're going to fix the roof. We're going to do this. But we hadn't done it yet. When is it going to be done? And again, I understand it's a capacity issue, but I've got to have something that I can go back and talk to people about. Again, I got all these groups that I meet with on a regular basis, and I try to be diligent in my role of being a listener. And I agree with Director Lewis when it comes to a leadership role, but I got to get input first. I want to hear from our folks, and I am certainly one who wants to try to push something through, get it on the ballot as quickly as possible, but responsibly. And so I need time to get input, because when you come to Ward 1, you come to Ward 1 for one meeting. There's 16 different groups that I meet with in Ward 1. Some may be able to come to the big meetings, some may not, but I go to all the specific meetings. And so I want to have something to be able to talk to them about. And again, what I hear most about is just public works, infrastructure things that they've said they've had on a list to be done 20 years ago that never gets done. And so I just want a little bit more specifics, but certainly as it relates to these two things I talked about, I'm not in favor of a targeted community development infrastructure fund.
You want something specific?
I want it to be specific.
What I would ask, and again, not for necessary discussion right now, and this is to Directors Richardson, Lewis, Miller, and Wyrick, if you all will spend some time this week just contemplating, we'll do all the work. If there's one project, 1, 2, 6, 7. We'll divide 5 million by 4. I was going to say, but we'll divide that by 4 and get that number. But if you'll think about and again, not for discussion, you may say, hey, that's a bad idea too, but just think about what can, and I'm not always for equal on certain things when it comes to this, but there is target community development includes 1, 2, 6, and 7. But if you all think about some specific projects in your ward, if you had, and again, this ain't enough money. This is pennies on the dollar. We need more dollars in target community development. Now, a lot of this will happen. A lot of our parks are in target community development area. A lot of the infrastructure happen in target community development area, but as far as the specific, if you all just take some time, think about some stuff, and then we'll get back with you so we can have it, because I don't want to propose something that, that Ward 1 doesn't like, Ward 2, 6, and 7 doesn't like.
Well, at the end of the day, Mayor, I believe in equity versus equality, but quite frankly, I'd rather just take how much I'm going to get in Ward 1 and I'll come up with, based on the input that I get, I'll come up with that. I don't want to debate with 4 other council members about $5 million. Just
give you your pot of money.
Just let me have some money for Ward 1 and let me get the input back from our folks, and let's do it that way. I like that.
It's enough out there. It's enough requests. And my thing is getting done what they already have out here. I want to knock stuff off the list, so.
No, I understand. We'll get that. I like that idea, giving you all your pot of money and let you deal with it. And
I'm sorry, I didn't want to just jump in, but I think Director Miller answered his own question, because you're meeting with those different groups, those 16 different groups. Your meetings with those people will help you help them. It's not for me or you or Director Phillips, Director Wyrick to decide what needs to happen. A lot of people equate me with the person who developed, I conceptually developed 12th Street, but it was developed The plan and the process was developed with the input of the neighborhood associations in those areas, the faith-based leaders in those areas, the institutional leaders in those areas. It was something that was combined with a planning process. It wasn't unilaterally decided that we're going to put this 12th Street police station here and we're going to put a new library here. It was through a planning process. Anything that we work on, Director Miller, has to have board approval. It has to have community involvement. It can't be decided by you, me, Director Lewis, or Director Wyrick, because it's not community engaged, it's not community involved. It runs opposite of what we're saying we need for this sales tax proposal. It's the exact opposite. We're not doing that. We're saying we need to have community input for a sales tax proposal, but then you have a community input. We say we don't want to have funding to help improve those areas. You can drive to those areas and we can see what needs to happen. And I didn't want to jump in right then and where it needs to happen. Those people see. And we give them access to funding because this city, since I've been on this board, whatever we want to get done, we get done. I guarantee you that. I want to go back to the message versus messenger piece I talked about a couple of weeks ago. Whatever we want to get done, we get done. Whatever we have sympathy and empathy for, it gets done. To Bruce's point, Bruce made a great point. We don't have the capacity. He don't want to hear me. I've been beating Bruce up since I've been on the board about us looking at ways to develop capacity with minority-owned businesses to get some of these contracts. Because some of the time, some people come down before us and we never say no to. Never. Usual suspects. And conversely, there are other people, and Bruce and I have talked about how we figure out ways to build capacity. It's not based on preference, it's based on capacity. And back to Director Phillips, I think he made reference to the workforce development. Right now, we're not utilizing the way that we should utilize that. There's a need for welders at the airport in Riverport that pay $60 an hour. Welders. They have training programs, but that's not being communicated amongst the board. We don't know that. We don't talk about that. We don't discuss that. And I'm with Director Phillips. What return are we getting on the museum? What return are we getting? We talk about returns on the golf course. I played all those golf courses. I was the most disappointed one when we shut down War Memorial because it had the most diverse population, age, race. It was diverse. Sex. It was diverse. I was disappointed. We get one letter, and we've had many people talk about the problem we've had with Resolute since we've closed those other two down. We get one letter from one group, one email from one group this week, and now all of a sudden, Resolute, we're not taking care of Resolute. What are we going to do about Resolute? And it goes back to the messenger. Unfortunately, Mayor, you can have 1,001 meetings. What they're going to end up doing is being perfunctory and symbolic. Because this board is going to support what they want to support, regardless of what the community tells us. They can tell us they want one thing, but us being the leaders that Director Phillips and Director Lewis said we're going to support what we want to support, unfortunately. That's the unfortunate reality. I don't play politics for fun. People are dying who look like me. That ain't fun. I don't play. I'm not playing when I come out every Tuesday night. I'm not playing now. This is real. Have somebody say they play, this is what they do for fun? Man, what's fun about this? Seriously. What is fun about us trying to improve the lives and outcomes of people throughout our whole city? I see you, Bruce. What's fun about it? Seeing people look like me and you die disproportionately. What's fun about that? We have... Go ahead, Bruce. I'm not here, but go ahead.
But one of the things that I talked about earlier was capacity, and one of the things that Director Miller mentioned was Interstate Park. Well, this board passed a resolution maybe 2 months ago allowing us to enter into a contract with, guess what, Redstone. Yeah, I mentioned capacity. They do our resurfacing contract every 3 years. Our Cranford does it, and they have a notice to proceed starting on Monday. So, one of the things again, and it's very difficult to understand and convey to our citizens. But when we are talking about a sales tax, it is as the money comes in. I mean, we can't.
I understand that.
We
No, I
can't,
understand.
yeah, we cannot, go out and if this passes in November for, a total of $600 million, then, we can't go out and borrow all that money at one point. It comes in, as you all know, when you get the sales tax report every month. So, but back to, and Director Richardson, you would remember one of the challenges for minority contractors mainly was bonding capacity. This city funded a pilot program, to help minority companies develop bonding capacity so they could bid on city contracts, and it didn't work. And basically what they told us was, listen, we don't have time to come to a class because we're out here trying to work. We've got to we're trying to make ends meet. So I did want to speak to that capacity issue again because Director Miller, you can report to your 16 groups that they'll start seeing work on Monday at Interstate Park. But again, it was a project that we had to pay as you go.
Well, I understand that, Bruce, and I appreciate you doing that. And I've seen you and worked with you long enough to watch that, and I appreciate you trying that approach. And I don't think because it doesn't work the first time, we don't figure out ways. We're the smart ones, supposedly. We find creative ways to make it work where we meet in the middle. I understand what you're saying. I don't know why I'm so cantankerous this morning. Maybe because I had my coffee. I don't know. That could be it. But I'm really fascinated by the language that I'm hearing and the terminology that I'm hearing. That Mayor, we got to have more meetings. You've had meetings. We've had meetings. I go back to. I hate to feel this way, guys. I really do. But the messenger versus the message.
Thank you, Director Richardson.
I'm not finished, man.
Oh,
Hold on
sorry.
a second. I'm still cantankerous. I didn't have my coffee yet.
We'll get you we'll DoorDash some Starbucks to you.
Well, I appreciate that, but don't let the press know about that. And letting my colleagues know about that. I just think that it's really, really fascinating, the questions that I'm hearing and about the process. We were told we need to have a process to debate the at-large positions. They had a process. They came up with a recommendation. Nothing changed. I've been on the board, Mayor, for a number of years prior to your election. After you were elected, Mayor, guess what we do after agenda meetings now? We have public policy discussions. That hasn't been done since I've been on the board. All of a sudden, that happens. That becomes important. And I'm just really, really amazed about the hypocrisy that I witnessed. And I try to stay quiet about it, but the hypocrisy of the illusion of inclusion. We got a lot of people who pay taxes in this city, who feel like they're included in this city, but yet don't benefit for the sympathy or empathy from this city. They do not. Drive through where they live. Look how they live. Look at the conditions. And I'm really frustrated about this reference to Northwest Arkansas, continued reference, because if some people had their way, including some who listen to my voice right now, Northwest Arkansas would be the capital of the state of Arkansas. It would be the capital city, whether it's Bentonville, Rogers, or Fayetteville. And I also find it quite fascinating that they don't have the diversity that we have. All these places we're making reference to have all these wonderful, wonderful things. Look at the places in the city where we don't have a lot of diversity. Look at all the wonderful things we have in those places. And look at the places where we have some semblance of diversity. Look what they look like. I applaud you and Bruce. I think you guys did a wonderful job. I think you called this meeting to hear what you were hearing now, whether it's what is positive or negative, whether we accept it or not. But you did this, gave us opportunity to weigh in. I don't think you said that this is a panacea. I thought when you first started, you said we'll have meetings. But to have people to keep reminding you that we need to have meetings, when you start the meeting out by saying we're going to have some meetings, we're going to meet with the community. That's. Let me go find some coffee, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Director Wyrick.
Thank you, Mayor. When I said in my previous comments that I was looking at the new work and what I considered was maintenance, that was me just roughly looking through the items that were on here. And Dean asked it more succinctly than what I did. He said, I need to know what's new and I need to know what's a continuation. In my analysis, it looked like we were spending more for new than we were for maintenance. So he asked it in a better way than what I did. The other thing that I wanted to say is under public infrastructure, and Director Miller is the one that clued me in on this. I should have already clued in on it when he was talking about targeted community development and how it would split up across 4 wards. Well, when you look at the infrastructure improvement, 70 million sounds like a lot of money. But when you divide that 7 ways, and then you pull out the equipment cost for the big Tonka toys for Public Works, then that gets you way down below 10 million per ward. And I just think that number is small compared to what our needs are. So I wanted to highlight that. I think that was all I had to add. But anyway, some good conversation today. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Before I go, Director Phillips, I do think the board, and again, this is a longer term issue. We have to get to the point of moving from public infrastructure spending being from an equality standpoint to an equity standpoint. Otherwise, we're going to continue to piecemeal projects. And I think the quicker we can get towards equity, it'll benefit the entire city moving forward. And that's both geographical equity and economic equity. And when we do that, a lot of have some positive downstream ripple effects. Great example is we know the economic output of Ward 4 and 5. We just need to go ahead and finish Canis and Chenal area infrastructure. You do that, you get more commerce. More commerce means more sales tax. More sales tax means more dollars into our general revenue stream. So simultaneously, we can handle more areas that may not cost as much as Ward 4 and 5 areas, but if we spend a concerted $10 to $15 million in Wards 1, 2, 6, and 7, we're cooking with some grease on some of those particular areas because they may not have the same cost as a Canis project or a Chenal project, but if we just say, hey, we're going to put $20 million in 1, 2, 6, and 7 to fix all of these sidewalks, all of these streets, a couple of these drainage things from that standpoint, it enhances. That, again, longer discussion. I know when it gets to it, everybody likes their pot of money, but we got to get from that.
I had one other thought. If Bruce holds out 10% of that for citywide projects, which is what we've done in the past, then that lowers that amount. And don't forget about, you're going to do Canis and Chenal. Andrea and I have Bowman Road that we have to contend with, and it being a 2-lane. Now we're building up both ends of it, but there's a lot of territory in the middle that's only 2 lanes. And if there's a traffic congestion on that street, then we're in trouble. But what I've tried to do with the money that's been given to Ward 7 is I looked at collector streets, because you come from your neighborhood, you get to Collector Street, you get to Interstate, you get to work, you get to play. But we have a number of neighborhood streets that are open ditches, potholes, limited right-of-way, those kinds of things. And so as I look at that number, that 70 million that's on here, when you start peeling out for wards, you start peeling out for the Tonka toys, you peel out for a pot of money to be distributed for emergency situations, that number gets smaller and smaller when it comes to the wards. And I hear what you're saying, but everybody that votes for this has got to have a piece of the pie. And that is the reason why we've always split that up, is because wards 4 and 5 and 6 need to have a piece of that pie.
No, totally agree.
And three. I'm looking at Kathy. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out.
No, thank you so much. I think finally we'll have Director Phillips.
Yeah, and this is going to be very quick, Mayor. This is just a logistical question, and you may have mentioned this, but I was a few minutes late. The idea is for us, not the idea, the requirement is for us to vote on this at the September 5th board meeting, because that's the latest we can do it. Is that correct?
That technically is correct, but Mr. Moore, I will commit to, we know you all are not going to be wanting to meet on September 5th as coming towards Labor Day weekend, so we're going to take advantage of special call meetings. We're going to take advantage of much. We got 35 to 40 days. We're going to use every bit of it. And then again, if this is not something, again, the board doesn't want to pursue, we won't pursue it. I don't think it does anybody justice to force anything down the throat, but I just want to take heed to the board members. We're going to continue to go to meetings, and residents are going to continue to ask us, what are we doing to get things done? Director, was that?
Yeah, and that did answer my question. The second part is the idea that, and I thought you mentioned this, that there's going to be an agenda item at each of the upcoming board meetings between now and then. That way, if we want to continue to talk, we can, or y'all need to build a schedule to get back to us.
Well, we're going to use every available Tuesday to discuss a potential sales tax.
Okay.
And whether that's 5 minutes or an hour, you all will determine that. I'll lay out the next steps. What we'll do is, what I've heard, a few different things. Director Wire, is your hand still up before I give these next steps?
No, I'm sorry.
All right.
Yeah, and that was my last question, Mayor.
So next steps to members of the board, what we're going to do is, because here are some overarching themes that we've heard, is I'm hearing, while privately I heard, we need to have a sunset, but I'm beginning to hear openly that nobody wants a sunset. So I think we're going to pursue a potential sales tax without a sunset. So that's number one. But again, ultimately, when it comes time to a vote, the board can change their mind and say, hey, we want to have a sunset. But what I'm hearing right now is no sunset, similar to what Oklahoma City has done. And from a standpoint, when they do go back every 10 years, it's not necessarily for a funding stream, it's for priorities for that funding, that existing funding stream. So that's number one, what I've heard. Number two, we're going to reconfigure the proposal to show what's new and what's existing as it relates to the current funding streams. Number three, there will be public meetings. Again, we're not going to have 50 public meetings. What we're going to probably do in the month of August is have a wards 2 and 7 public, or probably 2, 6, and 7 public meeting. We'll figure out a location. We'll do awards 1 and 3 public meeting, and then 4 and 5. We'll figure that out in the month of August. More than likely, those meetings will happen on a Monday or a Wednesday in the month of August. And we know August is a weird time because of school, but we'll get to that. So be on the lookout for a Monday 6 o'clock or a Wednesday 6 o'clock meeting in the month of August with the public at one of our local community centers from a public meeting standpoint. And then the Tuesdays, we'll reserve that for the working meetings with the city board. Finally, also what I heard was that when we reconfigure this existing versus new versus existing proposal, I might add, I actually didn't hear a lot of cutting. I heard a lot of increasing, but when you increase, you got to cut from something. But I didn't hear any negativity towards any of the projects today. I do want to applaud the city board. I hadn't heard any negativity on any of the projects. If anything, it's just how do we get more from that standpoint. And again, we probably could go up and project this to be 65 million a year, but we just aren't comfortable. We want to be very conservative in how we do that, because the last thing we need is for we pursue a sales tax at 65 million a year and it comes in at the time at 62 or 63, and then we got some things that aren't funded. And so, yeah, so we'll have working meetings on Tuesdays. We'll shoot to find combined ward meetings on Monday and Wednesday evenings in the month of August. And then we'll figure out if we pursue it in November, and move from that next step. That being said, hope everyone has a great day.